The dust has settled, Brendan. Rob Brown in Memphis, Brendan Martin in Colda, Florida.
This is Burberry.
Yeah, that's good looking. It's stylish, Brendan.
It's very stylish. Yeah,
Very,
when you're
very
freezing cold, you want to be stylish, especially when Jake Wimberly's on.
Yeah, and I've got on a Barber quarter zip. I got it Hewlett and Dunn to keep me warm, and it really does keep you warm. They got some of them out there left. Hey, Jake Wimberly batting in the leadoff position this morning, followed by Kevin Scarbinsky, one of the best journalists around out of Birmingham. Scarbo knows. Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider. Hey, take a picture of the QR code with your phone. Be a subscriber. Get automatic notifications every morning when we go live, or in the night when we do a pop-up show in the Buddy Martin Show.
Sometimes I can't sleep, and I can't sleep sometimes, and I just come on.
Yeah, we just come on and start talking in our sleep.
3 a.m.
Yeah, 3:30.
Well, I never leave the studio, Rob.
No, we live here, and I'm going to get Jake Wimberly to come on with us one time at 3:30 in the morning. But let's get started, man. Jake Wimberly, it is the morning after college football playoff national championship, and not even the luck of the Irish could pull that one out. Ohio State clearly was the best team in the country this year, but you know what? I want to get your takeaways on how they got there and some interesting stories that only you can come up with because you do the research.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. It's crisp and cool across the South. Of course, it feels like several years ago, the further south you go, the colder it's getting. I know the Mississippi Gulf Coast get a lot of ice, so hope those guys will be safe down there. And thoughts and prayers seriously to those people down there in Baton Rouge and other places. All right, so Ohio State. What's interesting about this? If this was a 14 playoff, we never would have seen this Ohio State team here. Probably wouldn't have seen Notre Dame here either. So, that's the kind of one of the blessings of the 12-team playoff. You are granted a little bit of liberty to make a mistake and then still possibly rebound if you're in one of the big conferences. But, when you look at Ohio State, and several things come to mind watching them last night. One, look, props to Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. I thought that first drive was, a clinic type drive. When you start talking about the way they were able to put, almost 12, 15 plays, 18 plays, whatever it was. I can't remember the number of plays, but it was 10 minutes that they burned. Very, very good job by Notre Dame. I thought they did what they could, but ultimately, not every year that you pay a lot of money for a team does it work out, but it did for this one. Will Howard breaks a record in the first half as far as numbers, completions and attempts versus completions. He was perfect. Quinshon Judkins paid off literally. For Ohio State. And then, of course, I thought, obviously, when you look at Chip Kelly coming in, that obviously was a huge move for Ryan Day.
Yeah. Well, Quinshon Judkins had 3 touchdowns. Yep. And Jeremiah Smith came up big. And notice the connection. Jeremiah, Fort Lauderdale. Quinshon, Pike Crossing, Alabama, Montgomery. Will Howard, Kansas State, transfer from Pennsylvania. There was a lot of interesting stories. The thing, the guy, Greathouse, the wide receiver, Jaden Greathouse, he caught 2 touchdown passes. Notes from my good friend Dave Cody, who was 30-plus years sports anchor in Austin, Texas, college, high school, covered it all. He played with Cade Klubnik at Westlake High School in Austin, where Drew Brees and Nick Foles also played, and former Texas quarterback out there now, Todd Dodge, is the coach. But what did you see about Notre Dame that made you think that they belong there? Because they don't ever quit, and they're going to be back.
Oh, they're not going anywhere. This Notre Dame team is as good as they've been in a long time. And, when you look at them, first thing that comes to mind that pops off the page is they play really good on the line of scrimmage, really good line of scrimmage game, interior offensive line play. Just look at the way they blocked Ohio State early and often. Riley Leonard, which I was joking on Twitter, but I called him kind of a poor man's or Walmart Tim Tebow. But the guy can flat out. I don't know if you guys saw the highlight reel that was out this week on him as a basketball player. I did not realize how dominating of a basketball player he was, able to play above the rim and, things of that nature. Was going to play college basketball, obviously chose football. But when you talk about Notre Dame, I think they've done a really good job playing, line of scrimmage football, offensively and defensively. Built very similar to Michigan last year. Yeah. Not as talented as Michigan was last year. Their task in the offseason is going to be, one, who's going to play that quarterback position for them, And then much like Penn State, I think they have to go get some speed. The speed is what ultimately shut the door last night with Jeremiah Smith, able to get, that one-on-one coverage and then run right past the defensive back. Penn State and Notre Dame, both very similar, obviously played each other in college football playoff. The one thing that Ohio State had that they don't, and then when you look at Texas and then, a lot of the SEC teams, is they don't have the speed on the edge, and they got to go find that.
Yeah, that is true. You looked at Notre Dame, they have good players. They're solid running backs, everything, but nobody that's a home run threat on every play. And Ohio State, 3 receivers, and the guy in BK caught his 202nd pass, all-time leading receiver in Buckeye history. That's a hell of an honor because they've had some great ones. We know about that. Joey Galloway, Chris Carter come to mind. Jeremiah Smith may be better than all of those guys before it's all said and done. Jake, what now does the SEC need to do? Double down, triple down to get back on top? Because this is 2 years in a row a Big Ten team has won the CFP. And, Ohio State won the first time. We did a 4-team playoff in 2014. They beat Oregon. They did it the first time we ever did a 12-team playoff. They got some serious bragging rights up there. Paul Brown, Woody Hayes, you think about Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, and now Ryan Day. 5 different coaches there have won the national championship.
Yeah, I think the first thing is, here's the deal. When you scour the recruiting rankings year in and year out, the SEC is going to be littered amongst the top 10, top 15. Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, those teams in the Big Ten are as well. Where you look at the last couple of years, and it comes down to, and if you don't believe it, I know we talk about it way too much, look at the NFL playoffs this coming weekend, quarterback play. Look at what Will Howard did this year. Look at what Riley Leonard did this year. They both played at an unbelievable level. Look at what J.J. McCarthy did last year for Michigan. The SEC has not had, what you would say elite quarterback play. Yes, look, Carson Beck had a really good year last year. Expect him to have a really big year at Miami this year. We've had Jackson Dart, really good quarterback. But you talk about, exemplary quarterback play. And, you could see that with Texas. This year with Arch Manning, that's going to be expected of him. You could see that out of Florida. It's not a question, I think, of talent. The SEC has unbelievable talent. It's just, they have not had the right mixture. You look at Ohio State, the 3-headed monster, Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins, and then, of course, the freshman wide receiver. We haven't really seen that in the SEC the last few years. Texas will get that shot. They'll be the, I want to say proverbial, but they're going to be a preseason number 1. You're going to hear obviously a lot about them. And I think you're going to hear a lot about Penn State as well, even though the receivers, James Franklin lacks that. But you're going to see that just because of the running backs at Penn State and then also the quarterback with Drew Aller coming back. But back to your question about the SEC, look across the league this year there and coming in this year into spring practice here, just literally about a month and a half. Don't see a whole lot of elite quarterbacks.
Let me ask you a question. Sorry, Rob. I just on the lines of we're talking about athletes, but now we've got this sort of pseudo offensive coordinator, heavily paid position with Chip Kelly. I'm reading reports today that Florida is probably not going to get an offensive coordinator. How much do you credit Chip Kelly in this? I guess not transformation, but getting all of these guys moving in the same direction, because as we know, you could have a $20 million team, but if you don't have the right brains at the top and the respect of these top tier athletes, they're not going to perform.
Oh no, I think you've got to have it. And look, I credit Chip Kelly big time for this. As a matter of fact, I subscribe to a email service. It's called, and you guys may look at it, I have no idea. It's called One Play a Day. It's a bunch of football coaches, elite college coaches, NFL coaches. They'll send out these cut-ups. And the one this morning was of Chip Kelly and what they did, that run from Quinshon Judkins in the fourth quarter, where basically it was a cutback lane where he took off, and it was about a 50-yard run. Chip Kelly ran the same play at UCLA, and they were showing like the variations of that play. All of that to say is I think it's extremely important. Now, when we start talking about analytics and getting into the hourglass that I'll do again this year, obviously, like we always do, I rate the head coaches And it's some people try to rate and do a pretty good job, I think, at coordinators. But to me, it's up to the head coach to facilitate that and to hire the right people. Obviously, you've got to credit Ryan Day for bringing in Chip Kelly and making that work. Nick Saban did that forever, right? I mean, you think about all the offensive coordinators that he trusted in, from Lane Kiffin to Steve Sarkisian, defensive coordinators, Kirby Smart down the road. So good head coaches, elite head coaches, I think, are able to identify great assistants and then let them work.
Well, if you micromanage them, they'll never. It never works too. You got to give them autonomy. Jeremy Pruitt, say what you want, guy's a defensive savant. He's incredible. In the way too early department, far be it from any of us to get involved in that. On 3, Texas #1 going into the next year, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Notre Dame. You got Georgia at #6. That's a big vote of confidence for Gunnar Stockton, man from Deliverance Country, Rabun County, Georgia. They got Illinois at #7, South Carolina 8, the Gators 9, Clemson 10, and then Auburn 11, Michigan 12, Tennessee 13, Bama 14, LSU 15. Wow. Hey, Jake, let's bring in Kevin Scarbinsky here for a few minutes and you can stay on here with us. Kevin Scarbinsky, one of the best writers, journalists around. There we go. Kevin Scarbinsky, Pennsylvania native, Scarbo knows, the Birmingham lead. Kevin, you watched what happened. We've been talking with Jake Wimberly of The Drive in Jackson, Mississippi, covers all things in Mississippi and college football. What were your takeaways? I was watching you on X last night about that first drive of Notre Dame, and you had a Pennsylvania native in there, Will Howard at Ohio State, who came roaring back. But your takeaways, and like I asked Jake, how is the SEC going to get back on top? Because 2 years in a row, we were not allowed to cross the velvet line to get into the club. This is tough, man.
Good morning, everyone. I don't know. Should we all reach for our smelling salts now? Is it? I said with tongue firmly in cheek that this. Hey, congratulations to the Big Ten. 2 straight national championships. Schools from the same conference winning 7 straight national championships. 4 of them in a row from the same state. So I think it's time to hit the panic button. However, there are, with what's developed with the 12-team playoff, with NIL, Ohio State had a very good roster, and then it went out and got some of the best players in the country to supplement that roster. Can SEC schools do the same thing? Where would Ole Miss have been if Quinshon Judkins had stayed in Oxford and not gone to Columbus? Where would Alabama have been if Caleb Downs had stayed in Tuscaloosa rather than going to Columbus? We'll never know. One guy probably doesn't change the trajectory all that much of any of those teams. But when you stack those guys on top of the veterans Ohio State already had, the Jack Sawyers of the world, that was a pretty loaded roster. But I think we're going to see that you're going to have different teams stack rosters in different times. It's going to be a lot harder, almost impossible to do pretty much impossible to do what Alabama did, to stay on top or near the top for that long or anywhere close to it in this new era. But I think you're going to see the teams that develop players, that are able to keep their players. That's another thing. That's the untold part of the Ohio State story. They used NIL money to keep a lot of guys that they had developed over time, and they stayed together. And that's something that's becoming harder and harder to do.
Jake?
Yeah. No, I think Kevin nailed it 100%. It's extremely tough to keep the rosters intact. And, talking to just a few coaches that have moved into this state down here in Mississippi that were former college coaches, position coaches at UL Monroe and some other places, asking them, candid questions. They're coaching high-level high school football here in the state of Mississippi. Why did you leave the college game? And they said, because of what Kevin just said. It's almost impossible to keep our rosters intact, and that, it's becoming more work than we want to deal with. I mean, when you start talking about you get into the season, now you're trying to coach a season, and then obviously now you're trying to recruit outside of your team to bring in, and you're also recruiting your team. I agree with Kevin. Ohio State, you got to credit them for keeping that roster together.
Kevin, you think about the money, they allegedly $20 million for that roster. I know some people that run collectives at a few SEC schools. I don't think they're showing their full hand in what they really have, but SEC schools, which ones can compete with Ohio State? Just a short list.
Well, if you're talking about war chests, which we are, then you have to look at Texas. You have to look at Texas A&M.
Yeah,
I think they would be right at the top. And I think it's been pretty evident from the messaging that Alabama Athletic Director Greg Byrne has put out during and after the season that Alabama's not at that same level.
Yeah.
That they have got to work harder to raise that kind of money that an Ohio State or a Michigan can raise. And that is a significant concern going forward. Because Alabama, look, Nick Saban and his staff, especially when his staff had guys like Kirby Smart and Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian on it, you know, he had the best staff. He had the best collection of talent. They developed the talent. They didn't just roll out the footballs. They were assembling talent, keeping the talent, and developing the talent. To do that in large part because the reward was on the back end.
Yeah.
Go to Tuscaloosa, stay 3 or 4 years, get better, become elite, get drafted, make your money when you get to the NFL. Well, now you don't have to wait till you get to the NFL to make your money in a lot of cases. So that method, that plan is out the window. You've got instant gratification from a financial standpoint more than ever. So how do you combat that? Well, at some point, you can only tap the same people so many times. How many times can you go back to the well and ask your heavy hitters, your big donors, how much can you expand your donor base? How many people are out there, for example, in this state or elsewhere, because Alabama is a national program, who love Alabama football or care about Alabama football, who aren't already donating to Alabama football? I imagine it's a pretty small pool. So, but that's what Greg Byrne has to figure out. That's what John Cohen has to figure out at Auburn. And a lot of schools across the SEC that are used to winning and are used to having superior rosters, it's going to be harder to do.
Yeah,
going forward.
And Jake, the perfect example of what Kevin's talking about is Pat Dye Jr. told me about Quinnen Williams when Nick Saban said, "Hey, you need to look at this guy," and he's like, "Who is that?" And he played Kevin, 9 or 10 games. He started out of Winona High School or Huffman, I think Winona in Birmingham, and number 3 pick in the draft. Jake, but it's like, you know, hey, Jerry Rice from somewhere in Oktibbeha County over there by Noxubee Wildlife Refuge, home of the brown-headed nuthatch and the red cock-headed woodpecker. I've hiked it many times as a bird watcher and hunter. Jake, you look at it, and I know you got a tight schedule, so a couple of more minutes before you go. In the state of Mississippi, I do know a lot about the Ole Miss Collective, the Grove Collective. I know a lot of these Bond guys in Memphis. They are I knew them back 30 years ago when it got kind of crazy in the Purple Church in Memphis and some other places where they took recruits. But how deep will Mississippi State dig and Ole Miss and to stay in with this? Because Dickie Scruggs is still alive.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. First, for Mississippi State, Charlie Winfield, who runs the Bulldog Initiative, does a great job with that initiative, and he is right there in Starkville. And, you know, they have had some significant donations this past year, you know, relative to Mississippi State. I think they had an $8 million donation several months ago, and then they had another donation come in that, you know, is 7 figures. But to Kevin's point, how long can people do this? You know, and I've said this, kind of echo what Kevin said, is, you know, forever you had 2 types of donors in college and universities settings and athletics. Is you had the one person who wanted to donate that maybe graduated in architecture school or engineering school or business and said, "Hey, I've made enough money. I want my name on a building, or I want, you know, something named after me." That's one. Yeah. 2 is the people, as Kevin said, is already donating to the athletic department, be it the Bulldog Club or the Grove Collective, or should be the Rebel Club, and you're getting seats and parking passes, and you can see a return on your investment. Now we're asking people for a third pool of money. How long are they going to do it? Because, hey, Rob, I go give to Auburn or whoever. I don't even know where my money's actually going. Is it going to the quarterback? Is it going to the basketball? I mean, I know you can earmark that money, but, Ole Miss did a really good job. I think Walker Jones does a great job with the Grove Collective. I know that they'll be all in again this year, to maybe to the same level. Probably not. I think you're going to see teams turn the knobs up and when they can, and they're going to have to turn them down when the money's not there.
Kevin, who were the two guys, the big guy, the tall guy, and the little guy, and Smokey and the Bandit? That's the guy in Texas.
Well, it just occurred to me, you can encapsulate Alabama's problem with this. The richest man in the state of Alabama is not an Alabama guy. It's an Auburn guy, Jimmy Rain, who happens to be on the board of trustees. And we know what Auburn, the university, and Auburn, the football program mean to him. But there are only so many of those guys to go around. And it was interesting. Bruce Pearl spoke to the Birmingham Tip-Off Club yesterday, and he told us, it was funny. He said, I'm going to tell you something I probably shouldn't tell you. And he said, no, I'm not going to tell you. He said, no, I will tell you that they're not paying their NIL money in basketball is not at the top of the SEC. He said, I'm not going to tell you who is, but it ain't us. Now, they've put together a collection of talent, obviously, and pieces that fit. They only got one 5-star, but they're putting together one of the best seasons in SEC histories to this point because they've got the right collection of guys that work together, that fit, and that are talented, don't get me wrong. It's harder in football, obviously. You need more guys. You need more dudes to play at the level of Ohio State during this playoff. So it's something that they're going to be banging their heads against. And that's why I think you're going to see different teams pop up. They'll be the usual suspects. It'll be the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Alabamas, the Auburns, maybe the Oregons with the unlimited pool of money that Phil Knight provides, it seems, to Dan Lanning and the Ducks. But you're going to have to build a team. And you may have more ups and downs, more dips. But when you hit it, as Ohio State did this year, you better hit it. You better perform at the right time to take advantage of that collection of talent, because you're not going to have that collection of talent every year.
I agree. And Jake, you look around college football this season, I can't wait to see the numbers. That's going to be interesting because they did try to go head to head with the NFL. But, and I know you just got a couple more minutes, but close us out just by telling me what you think your top 5 teams, who are they going into next year? And who do you think is building a lot of momentum via the portal at this moment? Because it's very fluid. It can change after the show. The starting quarterback at X school could be at Y school. Case in point, Carson Beck.
No, you're absolutely right. And, I was kind of looking through some of this last night, and I was looking at what McMurphy and some other people were putting out. If I had to just for fun give my way too early top 5, I would think Texas has to be right there at the top just because of the collection of talent and the money, as Kevin alluded to, that they can go get Arch Manning. This is going to be, his time to really step forward. I think Penn State is going to be get a lot of love at the top as well. When you look at James Franklin, Drew Aller coming back, 2 running backs are coming back at Penn State. They got to go find some wide receivers. For whatever reason, they just have not been able to, move the football in the passing game. Ohio State will be there. How good will they be there? They're going to be at the top of the Big Ten, but I don't think that you're going to see them look anywhere close to what they are this year. I think Georgia will be there. And then I think you could, with that 5th spot, you could throw a bone to Notre Dame, Miami. Let's see how good Carson Beck does down at Miami. Also, Oregon will be there. And then look, hey, we know how good Florida looked closer to the end of the season, and Tennessee as well. And let's see what SMU does with their collective and their money. I'm very, very intrigued to see, do they continue to pour money out in Dallas?
Yeah. Kevin, SMU, $150 million 1-week fundraiser. That's a lot more than the Girl Scouts make selling cookies. But how many times, again, can you keep going back to those people? Donor fatigue. I mean, Foghorn Longhorn, the big Texas legendary guy with the Eldorado Cadillac, He's only going to be doing it so many times. Jake, tell them how they can follow you, and we'll do it again next week.
Yeah, just on X at Jake Wim. We'll be on today 3 to 6, afternoon drive, actually 3 to 5 today. We got to get out of the way for Mississippi State basketball, taking on Tennessee in Knoxville. So we're on X, and you can stream the show at thezone1059.com. Guys, good to always be with you.
All right, thank you. Look forward to it, man. Kevin, basketball, man. Living in Memphis, you know, we got the Grizzlies, the Tigers, right in the middle of SEC country. What a season we got going right now. And I wish every guest had a background like yours. Holy shnikes, man. U.S. basketball writer, Hall of Fame writer, Kevin Scarbinsky. Talk about basketball. You know, Nick Saban, it said Alabama got a discount when Nick Saban was coaching there. You think Auburn's getting a discount with Bruce Pearl coaching there in terms, look at the way they develop players. When he left Plant City, Florida out of high school, Janai Broome was a 2-star, goes to Morehead State. The way they develop players at Auburn is pretty special. And Alabama. And Chris Beard at Ole Miss. Yancy Porter's going to be on with us in a minute. I hope you'll stay with us. But my God, can you remember a collection of coaches 1 through 16 like this? And what's the name of that guy coaching at Vanderbilt? He's the only one I can't.
Mark Byington.
Sounds
Mark
like
Byington.
a CPA, works for KPMG or something.
He's doing a heck of a job.
Really good.
Yeah, it is. Well, look, it starts with coaching. You get the right guy in place at the right school. And, you know, if you look at it, though, what Bruce Pearl has accomplished at Auburn and the fire that he has lit at other programs like Alabama, who knew that, and it's not a coincidence that as Auburn was making that run to the Final Four in 2019 and beating 3 blue bloods in a row in Kansas, North Carolina, and Kentucky, that Alabama went out and hired Nate Oates at the same time. And that was a brilliant hire as well. But here's one way to put this in perspective, Rob, and I shared this with the Tip-Off Club here in Birmingham yesterday. Since Bruce Pearl's 4th year, that's when he really got Auburn up and running, 2017, 2018. They won the SEC regular season. Well, they shared it with Tennessee, but they beat Tennessee head-to-head in their only meeting. Since that year, the last 7+ seasons, Auburn has more wins, more SEC tournament wins, more SEC tournament titles, more NCAA tournament wins, and more Final Fours than the University of Kentucky. And Kentucky wasn't chopped liver during that time, the last 7+ years. But we're talking about Auburn, which historically has been near the bottom of the SEC in basketball, and Kentucky, which has clearly been at the top. So that tells you something. And you could say that all of those same things about Alabama vis-a-vis Kentucky over the last 4 years, starting with Nate Oates' 2nd year in Tuscaloosa. And the real capper to all of this, Rob, is yesterday in the AP poll, Auburn number 1, unanimous, got every one of the 62 first-place votes. Alabama number 4, and those were for the 2nd straight week. In the coaches poll, Auburn number 1, they got all but 1 first-place vote. Alabama number 3. That is unprecedented, and I hope people, especially in this state, and I do my best to make them aware that this is unprecedented what we're experiencing right now. And this is at a time when the SEC collectively is at a higher level than ever. So what is happening in basketball in this state is pretty extraordinary. It didn't just happen this year. It's been building, and it really started with Auburn hiring Bruce Pearl and Bruce getting that thing up and running.
Yeah, and when Mike Slive issued the edict, hey, ramp it up. We got the SEC network coming along. Thank God for what Mike Slive did, and you knew him quite well. You know what? I'm going to say this. Once the other schools in the SEC with the resources like Auburn and Alabama and now Ole Miss, Florida, Georgia, look what they're doing with Mike White. Auburn got out of there by the skin of their teeth. That's life on the road in the SEC. Now that these other schools have decided, hey, basketball matters, and the fans get as angry after a loss in basketball as they do in football, Kentucky ain't that special anymore.
No, and look, but let's give Mark Pope plenty of credit. He's done a terrific job probably a much better job than most of us thought he would in his first year, having to put together an entire roster and having them in the top 10. That was an unbelievable game. Alabama winning in Rupp Arena 102-97 on Saturday. That's a high-level game, two very good teams that – look, Alabama's a Final Four team. Auburn is a Final Four team. Tennessee's a Final Four team. Florida's a Final Four team. Kentucky might be a Final Four team. Ole Miss or Mississippi State could get on a run. It's insane the level of play in this league to this point. It is truly unprecedented by any conference in the history of college basketball. Now they're starting to beat each other up a little bit, which is to be expected. So it'll be interesting to see how the NCAA selection committee parses that, because you look at all the advanced metrics. The SEC programs are just all over the top 10, the top 5, the top 10, the top 25. So I think that will stand them well in terms of seeding when we get to March Madness. But it's just fun. Every time you turn around, there's 2, 3, 4 big games. And by the way, can somebody at ESPN stop scheduling Alabama and Auburn basketball playing ranked opponents and tipping off either at the same time as they did last week, midweek, or an hour apart as they did Saturday?
Yeah.
Because my YouTube TV, that quad box, it doesn't change that quickly. So, and I'd like to be able to watch both of those games. So, as would a lot of people in this state, of course, but
I agree. And what I meant by Kentucky, they're not so special now. They have the history, the tradition, the heroes. They've got all that. They check every box.
No question.
But now that these other schools have made it important, and Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, catch it every Monday night at 6 p.m., Sports 56 WHBQ in Memphis and all over Super Talk, Mississippi. Yancy, good God, man, we're on with Kevin Scarbinsky, U.S. basketball writer, Hall of Famer over in Birmingham, talking about SEC basketball. We were talking with Jake Wimberly earlier about the National Football Championship last night, but the SEC wasn't invited to the party, so we've got to move on. This is a basketball league, but my God, Kevin, Yancy lives in Oxford. That pavilion, that's a hot spot to be. Let's talk some Ole Miss basketball, Yancy, because Chris Beard, like Bruce Pearl, like Nate Oates, those guys win everywhere they go, and it's not by accident.
Yeah, man. What the SEC, the old saying is that you're only as good as your staff, and that's what the SEC has. They got elite staffs from 1 to 16. You look at the state of Mississippi, and Jans, I think in Mississippi State is one of the more underrated coaches in the country. So we all know what Beard's done, and he's an elite coach, and he's got elite basketball assistants. He's got elite basketball analysts. He surrounds himself with a great staff, and he's doing a hell of a job right now. Ole Miss's biggest quandrum is that if there's one thing that they feel like maybe could be a weakness is transition defense and rebounding. So what they're having a problem is right now, and as you saw the Mississippi State game where they got beat on the boards 52-29, is when they shoot the ball, that they're trying to get back on defense. And when you're trying to get back on defense and prevent transition buckets to get into a half-court defense, which they feel like they have an elite half-court defense, you're not going to get many rebounds. So it's kind of damn if you do, damn if you don't. So that's kind of where they are right now. When they can figure that little piece of the puzzle out, they got a chance to be elite.
Kevin?
Well, I don't think people around here understood, or they do now, how good Ole Miss is when it's at its best. With when they went into Tuscaloosa last week and held Alabama, the leading scoring team in the country, in the low 60s and beat them by 10. That just shows how difficult this league is. If you don't bring it, and that was the disappointing thing about Alabama that night. And Nate Oates said it after the game. He was disgusted, and he called the game disgusting. A lot of Alabama fans felt the same way because they didn't bring it, and Ole Miss did, and Ole Miss wins by 10 in your gym. That shouldn't happen if you're a team at the level that Alabama is, but it also shows how much improvement Ole Miss has made under Chris Beard. So you also saw what Nate Oates is about, and you fully expected they would bounce back. At least I did when they went to Rupp, and they just. Here's the most amazing thing, guys. It was interesting. I was talking with Wimp Sanderson and his son Barry on their radio show earlier this morning. Alabama shot more free throws than Kentucky in Rupp Arena. Wimp Sanderson said that never happened in his 12 years as head coach.
Absolutely
at Alabama.
not.
He never experienced that. And to Alabama's credit, they made their free throws. They have not been as good from the line this year collectively, but they stepped up on Saturday. But that's what's amazing about the league this year. You better step up. You better be ready to play. You better bring your best effort and energy every night. And if you don't, you could get embarrassed even on your home floor.
Yeah, I've said all season long. I think Alabama is the best team in the country. And then you can make a great point with Auburn as well. And what a job Bruce Pearl's done over there, right? I mean, he's made that where you're begging for 2,000 fans on an average night, and now you go to Ticketmaster on a Wednesday game at 8 o'clock at night, and the lowest ticket is $400 to get into the place. It's just it's unbelievable. I mean, Auburn is the hottest ticket in basketball. I mean, they're what Duke was in the 80s and 90s. So it's just it's unbelievable. And I think Auburn's got a great chance to win it all as well. But for some reason, Ole Miss was very confident that whole week. Going into Alabama, they thought they had a really, really good game plan, and they executed it. And I don't know, I didn't hear as much confidence as I did at the Alabama going into State. State has those two bruisers down low, and they're athletic, and I think maybe it was a little bit more difficult matchup, and we're going to see Wednesday night, because the most physical team, the team that prides themselves the most on those boards is A&M, and that's who they got to play Wednesday. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, you get both.
Yancy, I hope for your sake, it doesn't turn out like the Alabama Texas A&M game. 58 fouls, 88 free throws.
Well, that's exactly how A&M likes to play, and look, honestly, that's how Ole Miss likes to play too. They like to murky the water. You saw that against Alabama, right? They want to get into a street fight. They want to play half-court defense and half-court offense. So it's two teams that have very similar styles. The difference between Ole Miss and A&M, though, is A&M is a much better rebounding team, and A&M has two dynamic scorers, and the rest just shoot very poorly. And Ole Miss has got 8 guys that could go for 20 points on any night. So they're a little bit more balanced.
Let me say something real quick before we bring in Rodney Orr, one of the best from Tider Insider, about LandersFordMemphis.com. If you're in the market for a new car, truck, or SUV, that's the place to be. They are open Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Here's 3 things to remember. 1, if you're getting your vehicle serviced, they'll pick you up at your house or at your office, bring you round-trip transportation. Number 2, when you get out there, they have a huge inventory. Poplar and Houston Levy and Collierville, the number 1 Ford dealership in the Mid-South for a lot of reasons. But when you meet Brad Bellamy, the general manager, and Kenny Myers, my friend who's been in the business for 41 years, they are committed to helping you find the right fit. Okay. If you didn't buy your last vehicle from Landers, you probably paid too much. And they just made a big investment at Christian Brothers High School. Got to be one of the largest, oldest all-male Catholic schools in America since 1871 in Memphis. And they just made a big commitment. Landers Field, Tom Nix Stadium. Folks, do business with these people. Let them know you heard about them on Sidelines. Rodney, we got Yancy, Porter, Kevin Scarbinsky. We're talking some basketball right now. You know, Alabama's a basketball state now. So jump in this conversation because we can't handle many more 9-4 seasons. So you got Nate Oates and by the way, I think is that out of respect to the great Winifred E. Wimp Sanderson from Florence, Alabama? I like Nate Oates' sport coats, man, Blazers or whatever the hell you call them, but damn, he's got people in the state of Alabama right now is hoop. What do you call it, Kevin? Hoop City or what?
Oh, it's Hoop Central. Soup Central. Hey, I'll throw one more. And Rodney, good to see you. Hey, there are 10 Division I basketball programs in the state of Alabama. At this moment, 7 of them are either in first place alone, tied for first place, or one game out of first place in their respective conferences.
God, Rodney, this is awesome.
Before Rodney says anything, I know that laugh because I know what Rodney's thinking is, yes, the state of Alabama has got unbelievable basketball staffs and the fans are really getting into basketball, but make no bones about it. Football still rules the roost.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. During the Ole Miss Mississippi State game, basketball game, there was a portal recruit that Ole Miss, Thaddeus Dixon, that was hanging in the balance, and there were more posts about him than the basketball game. So,
Yeah.
So as popular as basketball is, and as good as basketball is, make no bones about it, football still puts the food on the table.
Mhm.
That's right.
Yeah, but Kevin is the basketball guru. I know that, and so I wasn't aware of the stat that he had, but that is pretty amazing. And
Incredible.
you just watch, what Nate Oates has done in this program. I think you go back to the Texas A&M game and you watch them, for the first time probably ever, even when watching Alabama basketball. I didn't have a doubt they were going to win the game when it got tight on the road. I think that's where Nate Oates has kind of elevated this program in terms of the mindset, the confidence that they play with, that they have. Kind of the same thing at Kentucky. I mean, it got really tight there. Obviously, Kentucky tied it up late, but Alabama showed a lot of, mental toughness. Again, I understand what happened, a week ago today with Ole Miss. And you talk about, Yancy, you mentioned that Ole Miss is not maybe the rebounding team that Texas A&M is. I know that night they were dominating the boards defensively, especially. Alabama was one and done basically every trip down. But, to be able to bounce back the way they did against Kentucky on the road, I think that showed a lot of mental toughness, that kind of has been instilled in this program by Nate Oates.
Yeah, Kevin, Nate Oates is tough as nails. I mean, the moment he got there, he got it rolling. But man, just I have the wheels are up, the smoking sign is flashing, and unfasten your seatbelt. So just everybody start chiming in. This is a cool discussion to be having, that basketball is this big, not just in Alabama, but at Ole Miss, at the Pavilion. I think it's great.
Well, I'm interested to hear Rodney's thoughts on this point. And as I mentioned, I was on with Wimp Sanderson and his son Barry on their show earlier this morning. And Barry said he got in trouble with some Alabama football fans last week when he compared Nate Oates' reaction post-game to the Ole Miss loss, when he said that was disgusting, and talked about the level of effort that Alabama didn't bring. And he pointed the finger at himself for not getting his team ready to play. Barry contrasted that with Kalen DeBoer's generally upbeat approach, even in post games after losses. You haven't seen him kind of light into his team that way. And I'm sure he talks to his team differently in private than he necessarily does in public. He talks about the team in public. But I wonder if the way Nate Oates coaches basketball and that obvious toughness he has, that obvious standard that he holds his teams to, if that doesn't put more pressure on Kalen DeBoer, who has a different personality. He's not Nick Saban, he's not Nate Oates, and you have to be who you are. But does that increase the sense of urgency, perhaps? Not that that doesn't already exist at Alabama football to win every game every week, but there's a contrast there in personality, certainly.
No, I mean, I think certainly there is a parallel there, obviously. But, again, I think just the way Nick Saban, did things for 17 years around here, the pressure is obviously, the way he handles the media. Frankly, and I like DeBoer. I think he's a really good coach. I do. I think he's a fantastic coach. I think, we need to see him over a little bit of time. I'm going to be interested to see how he handles things, but I'm kind of like you, Kevin, or I'm not saying you're saying this. I'm going to say it, that I think he's got to be a little bit more like that. in his press conferences. I really do. I think he's got to, you know, if you want to say call a spade, whatever it is. I mean, you can't fool Alabama fans. You just cannot fool Alabama fans. They're not going to be tricked. And I know I see it a lot on TiderInsider.com. You know, come on, coach, let's just call it like it is. You know, it's you know, so yeah, I think you make a great point there, and I do think that you know, hopefully we'll see a different side of him, you know, as time goes on.
Yeah, Yancy, you look at Chris Beard. He's like you talked about his staff that he has, and Chris Jans at Mississippi State. I mean, these are guys that are just basketball junkies, and their teams. Every time they're on the court, you're getting a full 40 plus out of them. Talk about strengths, weaknesses on this Ole Miss basketball team, and why you think they can make a really deep run in the big dance.
Well, the strengths definitely lie in the balance. They've got 8 guys. They play 9 or 10, but they've got 8 that can go for 20 plus any game, and that's their strength. Beard's a big believer in the big picture. You know, you got to win 2 games on 3 weekends in the tournament, and he said that if you go into the tournament with 1 or 2, you know, main scores, guys that you rely on, you can't win 6 games in the tournament. You have to have multiple guys that can put the ball in the hole, and so that's their strength. And their second biggest strength is obviously experience. They've got 10 seniors on the team,
Yeah.
and eight are in the rotation, and 4 are 5th-year seniors. I mean, we've seen this in the COVID era, and especially the portal era. Now everybody wants to get old, so they're very experienced. They're very balanced. The weakness is obviously what we just talked about earlier. You know, they got out rebounded. They had a chance to win the game. You know, against State, and they got out rebounded 51-29. I don't even know how that's possible. So that's where they stay. You know, that's where they lie right now. You know, it's kind of they're in a pickle a little bit where they want to not get burned on transition defense in order to get back and get it to a half court game. You know, you can't crash the boards on offense, and so they've got to figure that out. And the way that they figured it out against Bama is Dia, their big man. It was an absolute terror for the first 4 SEC games. And then against Mississippi State, he only plays 18 minutes, and they sat him down the last 17 minutes because he was hanging out at the 3-point line. So, you know, they got to have Dia. They're not deep down low with production, and so Dia could be a superstar. And he was against Alabama. He scored 23 and had 19 rebounds, 6 assists, 6 assists, and 4 blocks. So, you know, if they can play anywhere near that, they're tough to beat. You know, 2 out of their 3 losses, they lost on the last bucket of the game. So they're gonna grind you. They're gonna play you very tough. It's a good team. It's a good team.
Well, I mean, they're 4-1. Bama's 4-1. Auburn's 5-0. Missouri's 4-1. Kevin, you look here, and we'll start going rapid fire here. And let me say something also about Winter Timber Outdoors, folks. Winter Timber Outdoors, Athens, Alabama, growing all over the Southeastern Conference footprint. All your shooting sports, whatever you do, if you need to have a gun, you can get it at Winter Timber Outdoors in Athens, Alabama. The store in Auburn should open in June. They broke ground in mid-November. They are looking in the Memphis area. They are looking all over the Southeast. You'll love this store, a competent, capable staff that knows hunting, they know the outdoor sports, and they got all the gear that you need. Take a picture of that QR code. Let them know you heard about it on SEC Sidelines. Again, they're going to grow in the Southeastern Conference footprint. Over 2,000 shotguns, rifles, and handguns in the store. They're educated. They get the ammunition like Migra, the best duck loads I've ever used. All the gear, everything you need for your deer stand, your food plots. They've got it at Winter Timber Outdoors. Proud to have them as a sponsor of SEC Sidelines. But Kevin, rapid fire now. You got a log jam up there at the top, and Tennessee lagging back there at 3-2. Every year, my Tennessee friends are like, Rick Barnes gets us so excited, and then bam, it happens. Is that just this league is that tough? I mean, Mike Slive's got to love what he's seeing from above.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. And I think having lived in Birmingham as the SEC commissioner for as long as he did, I think he's really going to be smiling up above when he sees both Alabama and Auburn in the Final Four. And I just hope this is not a wild, crazy pipe dream anymore. This is probably going to be the 5th straight year that one of those two programs won either or both of the SEC regular season championship and tournament championship. And I just hope the committee, when they make one of them a 1 seed in one region and one a 1 seed in another region, that those regions are on opposite sides of the bracket. Because I want to see the Iron Bowl of basketball in the national championship game. That might be the end. That may be Armageddon right there. That may be the end of us all when that happens. And I'm telling you guys, it is a very realistic possibility. And by the way, IBOB 1, February 15th in Tuscaloosa. IBOB 2, March 8th, the last day of the regular season in Auburn. You better take out a 3rd or 4th mortgage if you want to buy a ticket on the open market to those games. They are going to be bloodbaths.
Yeah, and you'll be sleeping, Rodney, in a tent for days outside of it. I mean, I was talking to Oakley McFerrin. He'll be on the show tomorrow morning, one of our interns, one of our team members. He said last weekend, the Auburn game, he had to step over people going to class. I mean, Rodney, the Coleman Hangar, I mean, that place has character, and it's a hard place to play. But man, here we are. We are 51 minutes into the show. We haven't even mentioned that oblong-shaped sphere football. But Rodney, what's it like on game night down on the Strip? It's conveniently located.
Huh. What game now? Are you talking about basketball or football or either?
Basketball. I
Well,
got a little carried away here.
I'll be honest with
torn.
you. You're asking the wrong person because I'm not on the Strip. I don't go I don't get over there. Rob.
Rodney's in the luxury suite. That's right.
I'm 64 years old now. I don't care about the Strip. I don't want to get near it.
You're right.
Hey, I was on the Strip during the Ole Miss Alabama game. So this past Tuesday night, it was a good time.
Oh my God. Hey, Rodney, I had 3 of my Alabama friends up here duck hunting this past Saturday. Had the best day we've had all season. They're from Eufaula and Alberta, which is Orange Beach, Wolf Bay, and of course Memphis. But they all were SAs at Alabama, and it's funny. We talked about basketball. We didn't talk about football. I mean, and we know football is very important in the state of Alabama, as it is at Ole Miss and all over. But Rodney, I got to ask you this question. Kevin referenced it earlier when Greg Burns said about NIL and more money's got to be raised. What's the general, reaction among Alabama people? Is it how many times can they come shake that cup?
Well, I mean, it's been it depends on who you talk to, but
yeah,
it's funny you say that because I was talking to someone late last night. Of course, after the national championship game, you start getting a flood of Alabama fans texting and calling about not being in the game and where the program is and all of this, and they're of course it goes back to NIL that Ohio State what they did and in terms of building their team, building their roster, and that Alabama can't keep up financially with that. I don't really know where Alabama is on the NIL scale. I mean, I see different things that supposedly where they are, but I know this. I know Kalen DeBoer has told people privately that Alabama's NIL program he can build the roster he needs to build. With the program that they have, it may not be Ohio State, it may not be Texas or Texas A&M level, it may not be Ole Miss level. I don't know, but he feels pretty confident that the program that they have is sufficient. And then I know that Nate Oates is, he's recruited extremely well. He's beat North Carolina, I think, 2 years for Cliff Amari and Jaron Stevenson. When those are guys that they really wanted. I think Amari came here for actually less than the offer he got at North Carolina. So what I'm saying is, it seems like just following recruiting, Alabama had the number 2, number 3 recruiting class. You don't pull guys from California that are being heavily recruited by basically all these schools and not at least be competitive in the NIL. Again, I don't think it's as bad as some Alabama people are making it out to be, but I just don't know exactly, where it stands among the top programs.
Yeah, Yancy, when people say, and Kevin and Rodney, when people say, what's happened to ACC basketball? I just say the SEC is what happened to ACC basketball, especially in Lafayette County down there, the Jack and Sandy Black, the pavilion. And y'all have all been to games. That is a special venue. You are on top of the court and it gets loud, and they serve Raising Cane chicken tenders in there, which are really good, Rodney. Yancy. Food's always important to me.
We took a bus about 50 to the Alabama Ole Miss game, and we spent a few hours before the game there on the strip, and there's a restaurant bar owner there that's good friends with Johnny Dessler in Oxford that owns the library, and he's Trip over there in Alabama. So we kind of, we go over there and they come over to Oxford to the library when they come to Oxford. And I spent a few hours talking to some Alabama fans, and that was all the talk. The whole talk was NIL. They wanted to know how Ole Miss was raising all this money, and they were worried about the Texas and Ohio States and falling behind in the NIL, and they got to do something about it, got to rein it in. And I told them, exactly what Rodney just said. You're not able to compete against these players from Cali and, players from all over the country unless your NIL program is sufficient. So I don't think it's nearly as bad as what is kind of a myth that's going around there in the Alabama program. I know a lot of their fans are heavily concerned about that. Basketball wise, right now, I think to get a true competitive roster, it's costing you about $5 or $6 million. In football, it was costing you about 13 to 15 million. Then you had your exception with Ohio State, right? That was at that $20 million mark there. And then this year going forward, though, with the revenue sharing, the guess is it's going to go up to 25, 27 million to have a championship roster. So we'll see with the Title IX ruling and all that kind of good stuff. How that goes down. I don't think that's going to hold up in court, especially with the new administration. I don't think they're going to make every dollar for dollar go tit for tat with the women and the men. But if it does not, if the model that they project going forward, it's going to be about 25, $27 million to have a championship roster, 20 million, 18 to 20 to have like a playoff type roster. So it's expensive. I mean, but this is capitalism. This is the toothpaste is out of the tube. You're not going to put it back in. There's no going back. As much as the fans, and it's funny. I love to see the reactions of different message boards through the SEC and through the country, and everybody thinks that their program is unique with these problems, and all the fan bases are saying the same exact thing, right? Fans are like, I'm done with college athletics. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
They don't care about the university. It's all about the money, and I can't believe this player's making 500,000 of this, and I'm making 200,000 or 50,000 or whatever. It's every fan base has the same reaction, but it's here to stay. So get used to it.
Well, I think what's going to happen, you're going to see a public finance deal come to a university, say for $50 million. They're going to sell municipal tax-free bonds if you're an in-state resident, federal and state tax-free. And in states like Texas and Florida where there's no state income tax, you get triple tax exempt. And that they're going to be selling debt. You're going to buy debt to finance that. This is where we're going to go to it. Let's wrap it up here, guys. And say, Kevin, we got two of the smartest guys, and my producer, Brendan Martin, has GatorbaitMedia.com. All these fan bases are packed with people with money and passion. And I think, we look with the SEC, and I'll just let everybody make their prediction. where does the SEC in football from today going into next year, where do you see the way back to the top? Because Ohio State now, it's going to be easier to ring that bell when they're selling the program. The SEC's got to find something. It's called hope.
Well, you hit on it. Passion is still unsurpassed. The passion for football in the SEC. There are select schools like Ohio State where they care just as much about their program. But as long as you have that passion, as long as you have that demand for excellence, as long as fans are grumbling, not only when they lose, but if they don't win by enough points or if they don't look good in winning, Alabama, South Carolina, for example, in football. Yeah. As long as you have that, the SEC is not going away. Look at the recruiting class rankings out of high school. Look at the transfer portal rankings. I see a whole lot of SEC schools on both of those lists in the top 10. So SEC football is not going away. Yes, there are adjustments to be made. Yes, it's a different era, but there are still more changes that are coming. We are by no means in a settled situation with college football on the very structure of the sport. And this is a transition period. The playoff is going to transition in 2 years. We don't know what that's going to look like. But I think we do know it's going to be harder for anyone. If you have to win 4 games in the postseason to win a national championship, that's harder for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
So I think you're going to see those national championships start to spread out a little bit. Not to say that Louisville's going to win a national championship or some off-brand program like Miami, which has never won an ACC championship, by the way. Still amazing.
It is.
You can buy all the players you want, but first of all, you got to coach them up.
Yeah.
They don't got the coach that's going to coach them up to win a national title. Sorry, Mario.
Yeah. No, I agree with it.
And watch out for Florida. Somebody said it earlier. Florida's in great position because they have a quarterback. You better have a quarterback who can make plays. And in DJ Lagway, Florida has a quarterback who's not only can make plays, is not afraid to make plays. You got to love that about him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
what do you think about well, I was just gonna we talked about Chip Kelly effect in Ohio State having an expensive offensive coordinator. Billy's Napier is looking like he reports today is that it doesn't look like he's going to get an OC. How do you feel about that, Kevin? And then we'll go around the horn there.
That's the one. That's my biggest issue with Billy has been he has an inflated view of himself as an offensive play caller and an offensive coordinator, de facto offensive coordinator. I think that's the one thing that they're missing is a big time OC. And when you got a guy like Chip Kelly leaving a head coaching job to go be the OC at Ohio State, we see. Look, Kane Womack was a head coach at South Alabama. Now he's a defensive coordinator at Alabama and did a better job than I think a lot of people realized last season. So if he doesn't get that shored up, I'm not sure they can compete at the highest level.
Yeah, Rodney. Yeah.
No, I mean, there were some things there that he hit on. And the first thing when he mentioned OC, I'm thinking Ryan Grubb. I'm thinking all this stuff. Actually, a player said this weekend and said, what are you hearing on Ryan Grubb? And he said, well, what are you hearing? I said, well, a lot of buzz. And he said, there's a lot of buzz inside the football complex, too. We just don't know. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Ryan Grubb. I mean, I think it's been extremely quiet on both ends, the Alabama end. And they tell me, the people that covered, DeBoer at Washington, when he goes quiet, when he doesn't respond to people, that means he's generally working on something that he doesn't want to address with anyone, right? So it's going to be real interesting to me to see if Ryan Grubb actually does end up, here at Alabama. We'll see. But quarterback play, you mentioned that. I mean, I'm not one of these guys that tries to run Milroe in the ground. I mean, it's all on my it's all on my board. I mean, it's constant with him. But I mean, if Alabama just gets better quarterback play, more consistent quarterback play, I think when you look at Tennessee, you look at obviously Oklahoma and the Michigan games. I mean, if they have better quarterback play in those games, they probably win them. So I think that's a real key. And I'm not really sure. Ty Simpson's a talented kid, but he's got no game experience basically of any meaningful reps.
Yeah. Yancy, what about Austin Simmons? Jackson Dart not coming back to Ole Miss for a seventh year?
No, he did sign appeal for a waiver to get another year because he only played in 5 games his freshman year there at Southern Cal, but nobody expects him to come back. And they are really, really high on Austin Simmons. I was speaking to a scout I've known for about 25 years in the NFL. Before the preseason, I said, who's the highest rated player that's going to go the highest on this team, you think? And he pointed to Austin Simmons, and I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, he's got a chance to be a top 5 pick. That he's going to be a big time. 6'4", 250, can run, got the prettiest throw motion I've seen in years. He's if he's as good as what they think he is, Ole Miss is going to be really tough. I think the SEC is just next season is as fun as it was this year. I think next year the storylines of the SEC football is going to be at an all-time high. I really do, and this is why. And give me 1 second. I know you run out of time there, Rob. You got Florida, who could go 2 ways. They could compete for a national championship, or Billy could get fired. I mean, I really thought that Florida at season's end was playing top 5 football in the country, and they've got all that momentum going into the all season. Then you got Alabama. You got, what is the more going to do, right? You got a new quarterback. You had Milroe that could play like Superman, or he could play like Zero. And so, as Rodney was saying there, he needs more consistency there at quarterback. What's going to happen with Alabama? All the pressure that'll be there at Alabama. Then you got Hugh Freeze at Auburn. It's time to put up or shut up. He has recruited his tail off the last 2 or 3 years in a row. What's going to happen with Hugh there? What's going to happen with the quarterback? Then you have Ole Miss. Is there going to be a drop off after Dart leaves and all these players leave? Will Simmons go to the rise to the surface like they think he will, and they just continue winning 10, 11, 12 games? Then you've got South Carolina. What's going to happen with that freshman quarterback, right? Are they going to take that next step? There are so many dynamic storylines in the SEC next year. I can't wait. I simply can't wait. What I pray for is that we do not have the same criteria to select the playoff teams next year.
Yes.
If they had the same criteria in basketball, there would be like 4 SEC teams getting to the tournament instead of 12, right?
Yeah.
Are they going to be fair about this and do this SEC bias where they want to make this inclusion, this woke system that they have right now, where they want to make sure the whole country's in the playoffs and not, 5, 6 teams in the SEC. And so that makes it easier for an Ohio State team to win the championship when there's only 3 or possibly 4 teams in there. Are they going to be fair about the selection this
Hell
year?
no, they're not going to be fair, because then what do we got to talk about, man? They're going to be fair. It's never been fair.
Hey, let me tell you something.
Crying in baseball, come on.
Yeah. Hey, what a lineup!
I won't have a job if it's fair. I won't even have a job.
What a lineup, man! I love it.
It's gonna be dynamic. SEC football next year. The storylines. I don't think there's ever been more storylines going into a season as what we're gonna have next year at SEC football. It's gonna be fantastic.
Let's just say that there is a definite sense of urgency. It's like a new bond issue, and everybody's trying to sell it right now. But look, what a lineup! Rodney Orr,
look, if I'm if I'm an offensive coordinator of any sort, I'm gonna want to go coach DJ Lagway.
Yeah,
I this is what I don't. I'm like, look, I'll do it for like free. I don't know, because it sets your career, dude. Yeah. Like, there's got to be people. It's not gonna be a hard job to fill. I don't understand, Kevin. I don't understand, and I'm a Gator fan, and it sucks. So this is sticking in my
I'm with you, Brendan. I don't get it either. And I got 2 sons at the University of Florida. I don't get it.
I know you do. So I take a beating on this sometimes. Everyone's like, well, dude, Billy, we had a great end of the season. I'm like, sure. Great, hard season, all that stuff. But, like, let's get better. Like, look what they did at Ohio State. I'm sorry, I'm done. But, Kevin, you're here, and I know your connection to the University of Florida. So.
Yeah, it's kind of like Jaden Daniels, right, in the NFL.
Oh.
You know, whoever is his offensive coordinator is going to have multiple NFL head coaching job opportunities.
Yeah.
Why would you not want to go down there with DJ at Florida and really build your resume? It should be a shoe in.
Yeah, and Rodney and Kevin and Yancy, let's do this lineup. We got to do this again next Tuesday because what you just said about the football, the sense of urgency, you can't. This is so compelling in the off season. It's just going to get and it's going to get more momentous every day. Because spring break, trust me, somebody will start about mid-February of spring practice. So it's coming, guys. But look, I'll let all y'all.
The rainbows. I keep telling you, the bows. The bows are going to have spring practice.
Yeah, the rainbows in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Well, look, guys, y'all stay warm. Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, Kevin Scarbinsky, Scarbo knows the Birmingham lead. You can't get better than these guys. And we'll let y'all go. Thank you for joining us. Let's do it again next Tuesday. Appreciate it. Brendan, I'm going to say about our sponsors, also Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. I'm wearing this Barber quarter zip. You can see it. Great looking, warm sweater. It is just, I'm toasty warm. It's 14 degrees outside here in Memphis. Hewlett and Dunn cowboy hat. We got our own version of the Landman. Brendan Martin, executive producer. But Hewlett and Dunn, I was out there last week. My kids were out there. It just blows your mind. All the Barber clothing, the jackets, great looking women's jackets, men's jackets, shirts, vests, sweaters, duck head, the whole selection of Filson. They've got the Filson luggage, the coats, the sweaters, the shirts, even Filson pajamas, Old South, Devil Dog jeans, Wrangler, Anderson Bean boots, golly, the Justin, Pendleton, Schaefer, women's purses, these STS purses and vests. Man, you ought to see, you want to get your wife a great present. Hey, Valentine's Day is coming up, but it's never a bad time to make a great purchase at Hewlett and Dunn on the square in Collierville. It's right down the street from Landers Ford. All of our sponsors like Matei's Garage, open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Black Road in East Memphis by Folks Folly. Tom Martin's Body Shop, G.E. Patterson and B.B. King. Golly, over 50 years at the same location. Cannot get better service. They even make the paperwork part of it easy. And you're looking to get you a hunting dog. Web-Footed Kennels, Jonesboro, Arkansas. My man Chris Aiken, known him 30 years. He is the best trainer in the business. He duck hunts every day of the season, gets after it, and then the dogs, he's got 7-8 people helping him on the beautiful 225-acre piece of land, rolling hills, technical ponds, lakes, everything. AKC, UKC, field trial. He'll get your dog ready. Web-Footed Kennels. Find them on Facebook in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And the great folks at Coolmore Logistics, Memphis-based with a global reach, transportation, Exo Armor, all of them, www.sidelines.live. Most often, you'll see the same price among us. Let that resonate. Go out and find excuses to win, find ways to help people every day. Brendan, awesome show. I love the back and forth. Basketball league right now with football gaining momentum.
Yeah,
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Stay warm, everybody.
Will we be launching the Sewanee thing soon now that
football's over this week? We're going to launch it probably Friday since Buddy doesn't have a Friday night show.
All right, we'll be having withdrawals.
I know. See, you know what? And all you don't,
you were right.
Jonesers on my ass about this. And you know what?
No,
3 people you listen to in your life. You listen to your wife or your girlfriend, right? You know, you got to listen to them. You got to listen to your caddy, okay? And you got to listen to your producer, okay? I've got everything for your Jones. It's all going to be
stay warm. Stay warm down there. Get Bones a sweater, okay? At Buc-ee's.
Yeah, I need to go to Buc-ee's. All right. Good night, everybody. Good night, John Boy. Stay gold.
All right. Stay warm. See y'all tomorrow morning. Thanks for watching.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.